The Prophet did not want any documents circulating other than the words of Allah, including documents attributed to him. So how was Hadith recorded? And what is the history of this documentation? What does Hadith say about Hadith? In Sahih Muslim narrated on the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, the Prophet said, "Don't write about me, and anything written about me, other than in the Quran, should be erased." And in the Sunnah of al-Tirmidhi also on the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, we asked the Prophet's permission to write, and he declined. And Ahmed ibn Hanbal in his Musnad narrated from Abu Huraira, when the Prophet heard what they were writing, he became angry and said, "Books other than the Book of God? Praise the Book of God and be faithful to it." Abu Huraira said, "We gathered everything we had written in one pile and set it on fire. Then how do we still have so many hadith and hadith collections?" The thinker Ahmed Amin commented on this in his book, The Dawn of Islam. Some scholars wanted to reconcile the conflicting hadith. They said it was forbidden to write them when the Quran came down for fear that the Quran would be confused with the hadith. As always, these scholars find some kind of justification, even if it is totally baseless. And if this was really the case, that hadith was only forbidden during the revelation of the Quran, then why were the Sahaba and Khulafa Rashidun also against it? If there was no restriction, there would be many hadith books during those times, because people would scurry to record hadith while they were still fresh in people's memories, and not wait for 2 centuries later. There are numerous accounts in history books that suggest that the refusal to write hadith continued after the death of the Prophet, during the reign of the Khulafa Rashidun, weakening the argument that the Prophet changed his mind and permitted the writing of his words beyond the Quran. The first Khalifa Abu Bakr forbade writing the hadith. Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, narrated in Abu Dhabi's The Memorial of the Hadith Masters that Abu Bakr collected 500 hadith of the Prophet, then after one night of torment, he asked her to tell him the hadith she knew, and she did, and then he gathered them and burned them. Aisha asked him, "Why did you burn them?" And he said, "I feared that I would die with these words on me, and they would be full of his words that I trusted, but it would transpire that it was not what he said, and I would have relayed them incorrectly." This narrative is verified by Abu Bakr, who has the least narrations of the hadith of all the companions of the Prophet, despite him being the companion that was with him the most. The Khalifa Omar ibn al-Khatab was more vehemently opposed to narrating hadith than Abu Bakr. In a bid to restrict this, Ibn al-Khattab consulted with the companions of the Prophet about writing the Sunnah, and the majority of them recommended it. After a month, he said, "If people of the book before you have written books alongside the book of God, they referred to it and neglected the book of God, and by God, I will not let anything rival the book of God." And he abandoned writing the book of Sunnah, but Omar did not leave it at that. He also burnt the books that included hadith. In the Restriction of Knowledge by Al-Khatib, it said that Omar ibn al-Khattab heard that certain books circulated among the people. He asked people to see these books, so they assumed he wanted to read them, so they bought them to him, and he burnt them. Omar forbid narrators from spreading hadith. In A Brief History of Damascus by Ibn Manzur and Beginning and End by Ibn Kathir, they mention that Ibn al-Khattab told Abu Huraira, "They must stop this talk of the Prophet of God, or I will stomp them into the ground." And he told Ka'b, "They must stop this talk or I will send them to the land of the monkeys." And in The Memorial of the Hadith Masters of Imam al-Dahabi, he chronicled how Omar imprisoned 3 people, Ibn Masud, Abu al-Darda, and Abu Masud al-Ansari. He said, "You have talked too much about the Prophet of God." And in the Book of Guidance of Abu Yali al-Khalili, it mentions how Omar ibn al-Khattab imprisoned a number of people. Among them was Abu Huraira, and said, "They told stories from the Prophet of God, and they stayed in his prisons until he died." Uthman ibn Affan was one of the most important of the Prophet's companions, and he did not talk much about the Prophet. In the Book of the Major Classes by Ibn Sa'd, it is said Uthman stood on the podium and said, "It is not allowed for anyone to narrate a hadith that they did not hear in the eras of Abu Bakr or Omar. It did not prevent me from talking about the Messenger of Allah, not to be aware of his friends. I heard him say, 'Whoever says things I did not say has earned his seat in hell.'" Sheikh Muhammad Abu Raya said in his book, Shedding Light on Muhammadan Sunnah, the Khulafa Rashidun and the close companions and scholars avoided and even feared narratives of the Prophet, meaning that they knew that they could recount what they heard from the Prophet accurately, but refrained from narrating and writing hadith. Muhammad Rashid Reda said of the Sahabis, They did not want the Hadith to become part of religion in the way the Quran was. And had they understood that if the Prophet wanted, that they would have written and gathered everything they had heard from the Prophet and spread it among the people. If the closest companion Sahabis of the Prophets related so little from the Prophet, as we have already pointed out, where did all the Hadith come from? The companions of the Prophet who talked most about the Prophet by Abu Huraira and Aisha, what was the opinion of each other? According to the Brief History of Damascus by Ibn Manzur, that two men from Bani Amir met Aisha and said, Abu Huraira said that what brings down a house is women and horses. This angered Aisha, and she responded, this is a lie, and what brings suffering to Abu Qasim is what he said. This is what the people before Islam suffered from. According to Aisha's words, Abu Huraira lied. When they met in person, she accused him of making up hadith, and instead of defending himself, he began to talk about her. In the book Fath al-Bari, The Explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Aisha said to Abu Huraira, you narrate things about the Prophet that I never heard from him, so he told her, well, your mirror and makeup took you away from him, while nothing took me away from him. Hadith, as we have it today, in reality was nothing more than a political tool than anything else, just the same as people use religion to further their politics today. The compiling of the Hadith, which began late in the 2nd century Hijri, before al-Bukhari and after the death of the companions and most of the followers, was ordered by the rulers of the Umayyad dynasty. Al-Shihab al-Zuhri was the first to compile Hadith and was forced to do so according to Ibn Abdul Barr's book, The Statement of Science. He said, I hesitated until I was coerced to do it for the princes, so when I was coerced, I did it for the people. The Umayyad rulers continued to coerce narrators to codify the Hadith of the Prophet to cement their rule. The thinker Ahmed Amin said in his book, Dawn of Islam, the rivalry between Ali and Abu Bakr, and between Ali and Muawiyah, and between Abdullah bin Zubayr and Abdul Malik, and then between the Umayyads and Abbasids, all of this was a reason to compile a lot of Hadith. In his book Shedding Light on the Mohammedan Sunnah, Sheikh and intellectual Mahmoud Abu Raya said, politics has entered into this matter and greatly influenced it. Hadith was used to support their rule and made it one of the strongest pillars to establish its construction. This situation heightened during the era of Muawiyah, who used his influence and money to record it. Until today, Hadith is used by holy men to keep their business of religion running. Remove Hadith from the equation, then you have a population of free-thinking and free Muslims who follow only the Book of Allah, not bound by laws made by 7th century rulers in the form of codified and so-called authentic Hadith to keep the population in check and solidify their rule on them. And that's why there wasn't any or much Hadith during the time of the Prophet, Khulafa Rashidun or Sahaba. Because the Prophet forbade it, the Khulafa burnt it, and the Sahaba did not speak of it. So why is it still we base 95%, if not more, of our religion on it?